Hello friends, today my wife and I are beginning our trip across the country from Colorado all the way to Virginia. I mentioned this a couple videos back, well I guess in a few videos, that we were going to be moving for a few reasons. One, we're selling our current house, but we also have a baby on the way and want to be closer to family. And so we have a bit of a chaotic situation with how everything is lining up, buying a new house, selling our current, having a baby coming in October. So with all that said, we have a 3-day trip. We're spreading it out over 3 days, essentially driving 6 hours each day, stopping in Tennessee, which is where we're going to be storing basically most of our belongings because we plan to buy a house there, and then heading on the last day, another 6-hour drive to Virginia because we're going to be staying with family in the meantime. So I'm looking forward to it. Going to be vlogging along the way because we're going to be stopping at multiple bookstores, ideally like 1 or 2 per day, as we pass through Topeka, as we pass through St. Louis, Nashville, things like that. And I should be meeting up with Matt over at Clausen Books in Nashville, so that'll be a lot of fun as well. So yeah, I'm gonna bring you along for the ride, for the journey, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. And this is Honey's first big road trip, and she's not excited about it. And I totally forgot, beyond vlogging the trip and visits to bookstores, I'm also going to be updating you on my progress and thoughts on Life and Fate by Vasily Grossman. I love the hell out of this book. I'm almost done. I have about another 200 pages. I'm just starting part 3 now, so I should be finishing this in the coming days on this trip, so I'll also be sharing my thoughts on this. Good morning. So it's about 7:30 right now. I'm making our first trip to the car just to repack and organize things in the truck before we head out for our first big day of driving. We're going to be driving for about 6 hours. We'll likely make a few stops on the way to Topeka for restroom, food, things like that. Maybe 1 bookstore, and then there's actually 2 bookstores in Topeka that we plan to go to that are near our hotel. So that'll be convenient. But like I said, right now, just organizing the truck, getting ready for the road trip this morning. Read a little bit, got some work done, hit the very tiny but serviceable gym here at the hotel. Alright, so as you can tell, Honey's not having a good time. This is her first long road trip, so she's not very stoked about this. She's very antsy and anxious. Dobie's a champ. He had a great time last time 3 years ago when we drove out over 3 days, and this time he's pretty settled. But anyway, we stopped in a small town in Kansas called Salina. We were going to try and look at this like one kind of coffee shop slash bookstore, but it doesn't really look like much of a bookstore. But we're just gonna grab coffee there. That's where Maddie's at right now. And then we're gonna head to, it's right like somewhere in the back of me, but a little bakery called Seraphim, I think, bread, and grab 2 things. One, a sandwich for each of us. And then we're also gonna get something called, I think, a B-Rock or Bi-Rock. You Germans could pronounce it correctly for me. But it reminds me of a pirashka, like a baked kind of like pie thing that's really common in Slavic culture. And this is supposed to be like a German kind of version of it that they immigrants brought over here to America, and specifically here in Kansas. So we're gonna try that out, and I'll let you know what I think of it. But that's the plan. Drive another 2 hours, get to Topeka. Or no, only another hour. I think an hour, hour and a half, something like that, get to Topeka. And there's 1 bookstore that will be open in time for us to go to. Unfortunately, we forgot that there was like a time jump and everything like that. So likely only gonna hit 1 bookstore today, but that's not a big deal. I think more so I'm excited for the bookstores in Nashville and around St. Louis.
When you ordered, they said B-Rocks?
B-Rocks, yeah.
Well,
yeah.
you want to split them out?
Sure. And I had to correct my pronunciation earlier on my own blog. It's a pirozhok, not pirashka, but pirozhok.
Oh man, crunchy.
It's interesting. It's got some beef on the inside. I don't know what else is there though.
Cabbage. It's very doughy.
We'll save one for like maybe when we get to the hotel.
Yeah.
But we got that and some sandwiches, so we're gonna be eating. All right, so we are in Topeka, and we just got to the one bookstore that we're gonna have time to stop at. And it's over there, I'll show you in a minute. It's got a weird like back entrance by this alley, but I'm optimistic about the books inside. It's called Dean's Half Price Books. So I'm gonna stop in there, and then while I'm in the store, Maddie's gonna walk the dogs around, and then we'll swap off. So fingers crossed we'll find some gems in there. Just sent Maddie in there, and I did end up getting 3 books. I was teetering, before I show you what I got, I was very close to getting some World War II history. I was teetering between Ian Kershaw's The End and Ian Kershaw's The Third Reich in Power. Both were great editions, nice hardcovers, about 15 to 18 bucks each. And I kept thinking, what would David Murphy suggest? You know, what would he say I should start with? Because he's recommended both books, and I haven't really gotten my toes wet in World War history at all. World War II history, I should say. But I already have those 2 Stalingrad books at home. I need to work with what I have first. So I ended up not getting those, but I did get a different piece of history. And also, I was like, I mean, how many big history books do I need to buy right now? I ended up getting this book of Stalin, and this is by Stephen Kotkin, I'm gonna assume is how it's pronounced, and this is actually the second book in a trilogy that he's working on. I don't think the 3rd book is out yet, and unfortunately they didn't have the 1st book in the store. I figured I can either buy the 1st book somewhere, or maybe I could start out of order. I don't think it's a huge deal. Basically, he has it broken up, I think, between, again, 3 periods of history in his life. But I ended up getting this biography instead than World War II. So I got that massive book. I think that's by Penguin Press. This other one for $1 was Ezra Pound's Selected Cantos. So I haven't read anything from Ezra Pound. He's a very complex and interesting figure historically and ideologically. And I've heard a lot of praise for his cantos and his writings, but I haven't really known where to start. And for $1 and this, nice selection from, I think this is an old, New Directions press. So I grabbed that, and then this last one was like made for me. All of you guys are gonna just roll your eyes, or maybe I don't know, being glee, but the Viking Portable, the Russian 20th century Russian reader. This is just made for me. First of all, it has a lot of writers I already love: Tolstoy, Chekhov, Gorky, Bunin, Tiefi, people I've read, but it also has Alexander Blok, Yevgeny Zamyatin, Boris Pasternak, Platonov, Akhmatova, and also other names I haven't heard of. A lot of ones I have, but a lot of other 20th century Russian writers that I have yet to read, yet to find. So this is like, catnip for me. But this will be pretty neat. I think with these Viking Portables, this is like the, first Viking Portable I've bought. Usually I think it's just like excerpts. It's not even sometimes full stories, but whatever. I feel like this is just tailor-made for me. So that is the little haul. We'll see if my wife ends up getting any. Neat little store. Like I said, some pretty decent prices. Like pretty good on this. I think this is what, $6, $1, and then this was like $18. So it wasn't like dirt cheap on some stuff, but a pretty good selection too. So it looks like my wife did not get any books, but that doesn't surprise me. But I at least got 3 here. All right, so we got the car loaded up. Maddie is inside the hotel right now, checking out while the dogs freak out. But about to hit the road. Right now, like I said, we're in Topeka, Kansas, or maybe I didn't say that, but we're in Topeka. We're about to head another 6 hours towards, we're gonna actually stop in Marion, Illinois, but before that, we're gonna make a pit stop in St. Louis, which I think is maybe like 30 to 60 minutes. before Marion, Illinois, to hit a few bookstores. So there's two actually that were recommended to me in St. Louis on Instagram: Dunaway Books and then Left Hand Books. I think those are the full names, or that's just what I wrote down here. But fortunately, both stay open pretty late on Sunday, which is nice. The weekends I was nervous about with hours and when we would actually make it. Right now it's about 7 o'clock, or no, 8 o'clock, almost 8 o'clock. So we're gonna hit the road. Should be in St. Louis in like 4.5 hours, 5 hours, something like that, especially if we have like a restroom stop, something like that. Hit those bookstores. That'll be a lot of fun. We should have more time to do that than we did yesterday. So do those bookstores, then get to Marion, relax, and do it all again tomorrow on Monday, which is our last big drive, that's when we'll stop in Nashville. I should be able to link up with Matt and hit at least one bookstore, maybe a bookstore and a coffee shop, we'll see, in Nashville. And gosh, you know, just a few more long drives, but having a good time. Reading a little bit in the morning. The mornings are a little bit chaotic. Here comes Maddie. So I'll talk to you guys in a bit.
Get back. Get back.
All right, we made it to St. Louis, chowing down a little bit on some food we got. I think the place was called Grace's or Grace's Kitchen, something like that. Some nice little fried chicken spot. So eating that real quick, and we just parked near, I think it's called Left Bank Books is the first spot. So Left Bank Books, about to head in there, and then we'll head over to the other one that's called Dunaway Books, I think. So let's go see what we can find. Empty-handed. Unfortunately, that store was it was a great store, and it had a ton of new books, a great selection. I saw some New York Review of Books out there. I'd like the recognitions and a bunch of other great titles. And then I went downstairs. That's where they keep all their used books. And you know, there was a good bit of shelves of fiction and history, and there were a few history books that I would consider, but I just wasn't, you know, leaping at to buy right now. But unfortunately, like, nothing really that even got a maybe from me in the fiction section. So not the biggest used selection, definitely not the kind of books that I'm looking for, unfortunately. But my wife is in there now. It's much more of a store, I think, up her alley. And so we'll see if she walks out of there with anything. I doubt it, but we'll see. And then we're going to head to the other bookstore, which hopefully delivers a little bit more. But we will see. Вчера мы остановились в несколько книжных магазинах. Good morning. It is Monday, and we're getting ready to leave in about an hour to head towards Tennessee, finally. So we drove about 6 hours Saturday, 6 hours yesterday, and we have another like 6.5, I think, today. But I am looking forward to today's drive, not only because we're stopping at some bookstores, but I should be meeting up with Matt at a place called Rhino Booksellers in Nashville. I don't know if it's in the heart of Nashville, but around there. We're gonna meet up with him, which will be nice. And then after we shop for some books, we're gonna head to, I believe, a coffee shop he said that's nearby called Sump, something like that. So that'll be a nice little like pit stop, hour and a half probably or so break of this drive. And then we'll hit the road again and drive the last hour and a half or 2 hours to Knoxville, Tennessee, and stay there. And then we kind of just have to wait for the movers to arrive with all of our things to get them in a storage unit, and it's a process. But at least the vast majority of the drive will be done. But as you saw this morning, I still have my tutor session. I still doing everything in my power to maintain some bit of reading, some bit of studying each day with Russian. Even if it's not optimal, I'm still trying to maintain progress towards those goals of mine. But honestly, it's probably good practice or a bit of a test run for how life is going to be and how chaotic things are going to be once our son arrives here in October. So kind of keeping that in mind, how I'm going to juggle all of these priorities and things I'd like to do and all of that, and making sure I'm taking care of those who need me most. But that's it for today. Yesterday I did buy 3 books at that bookstore. I didn't show them to you because I plan to do a book haul later. So any books I also buy today in Nashville, I'm just gonna save until a future video. But I did get some really cool finds there. At first I was like, man, am I really gonna go 0 for 2 on Bookstores today? But no, I didn't. I found something cool. So I'll show you guys that in the future. But I need to hit the gym real quick, hit the complimentary breakfast, and then hit the road. Alright, half the driving done for the day, and we just made it into Nashville. Fortunately got off the interstate, which is always stressful in a big city like this. And it's about 11 o'clock, or actually it's a little bit before. Matt's going to meet us here at 11 o'clock because the bookstore doesn't open until 11. So we're going to do that, and then, like I said, head to the coffee shop and probably grab food there as well. We're a bit hungry. So we'll grab some food and then go from there. Alright, at last we made it to the final hotel in this long moving adventure. And this will probably be the spot that we're staying at for a few days instead of just one quick night, just because we're waiting for the moving truck. I think I already explained this, but we're waiting for the moving truck to deliver our stuff here, and so we have to wait for that. But set up shop here, and then I had a great time with Matt over at Rhino Booksellers. Yeah, Rhino Booksellers, really great store. Every time I thought it was done, there was like another room, another tight corridor, something like that with books. And I found a few really rare authors to find in bookshops, like 2 that I haven't found in any bookstore yet over the past few years. So I was really happy to find that. I even talked Matt into buying kind of 2 books, but definitely one. I gave him a copy of 12 Chairs by Yevgeny, Ilya Ilf and Yevgeny Petrov. I've raved about it on the channel before. Hilarious book. And I saw a copy in there and gave it to him, and he ended up buying it. So I think he'll enjoy that. Looking forward to hearing his thoughts. And then we went and got coffee and just chatted about books, life, all things basically. So really, really good time. Really great to meet him in person and all of that. So great day. Just tired. So I'm going to do a little bit of work before I go to bed. And then I'll chat with you guys probably later this week, to be honest. So I changed my mind. I think this will actually be a good stopping point for this vlog, and then I'll make a part 2 essentially of our time here in Knoxville, doing some book shopping and waiting for the movers and all that, and then our final trek towards Virginia, and that'll be an additional video. And I also realized I haven't really talked much about life and fate in this video. I think just because we've just been so busy. We get into a hotel late, we sleep, we wake up, we're back on the road. It's just been quite chaotic. But I am 100 pages away from finishing this book, so I wanted to give not my final thoughts on it, but a little bit more, I don't know, share my experience, I guess, a little bit more, share some of my impressions as I head toward the final chapters. This book is phenomenal. I said this in one of my previous videos when I had just cracked into this and how it was working for me on so many different levels. ideologically, philosophically, writing style and prose, setting, all of these things. And this book really does feel on the level of War and Peace. And I draw that comparison because both novels have a sprawling cast of characters. Both novels center around this momentous world event, specifically a war, and both delve into this question of Russian nationalism and spirit, identity, all of that, in very different ways. And Grossman actually calls upon, not specifically War and Peace, maybe here or there, but mainly calls upon Tolstoy's connection to nationalism and this Russian spirit, and how that's kind of bolstered or reinvigorated through such a catastrophic event like a world war, where the Russian spirit identity, even after times of horrific oppression and atrocities that are referenced in this book, which we'll get to in a moment, even despite all of that, basically, you still have citizens generally coming together, in the spirit of Russia. Like, if they're, at the end of the day, if there is no Russia, if the Germans are successful and conquer Stalingrad and move further into Russia, then there will be no Russia to speak of. And so they are fighting for their ancestors, they're fighting for their history, for their culture, for their country, all of these things. So that's why there's a little bit of a comparison. However, I will say, although there are some distinctive and memorable characters and passages within this book, it doesn't contain the same level of memorable quotes or memorable events and memorable characters that War and Peace has, with an Andrei Bolkonsky, with a Natasha, with some of those balls and gatherings. It doesn't have that. There's not so much of a split either between like war chapters and peace chapters and things like that. And actually, although you are centered around the war front, I don't think that much action occurs in a specific battle or in the heat of war or anything like that. A lot of it is kind of them waiting in anticipation, or them just surviving some kind of shelling that they're experiencing, which is part of a battle, is part of the war more broadly. However, most of this is kind of balancing around following different families, following different characters. And there's at least two characters that are balancing two lovers at the same time. But you're not just dealing with the stress, the terror, and the suffering on the war front, but you're also immersed in the perpetual fear, terror, and all the repercussions for the people that have evacuated these war-torn cities of Moscow, St. Petersburg, Stalingrad, and the like. And also just how these families kind of get dispersed throughout the country as well. Specifically, you're following the Shapashnikov family, mainly this trio. I believe it's a trio of sisters. There's honestly a lot of characters with the same last name that's a little bit hard to follow, even for someone like me that is a little bit more keen to the patronymics and things like that. So you're essentially following that family. You're following a few lieutenants and generals and different officers on the war front, and then you're also following Victor Strum, who's a physicist who's kind of like a stand-in for Grossman himself, who's also Jewish, who's also a physicist. Grossman, I believe, studied physics, if not was a physicist himself or scientist to some extent. And he's making very important discoveries, but he's also feeling the pressure and fear, specifically right now in the story, of the police state, when an individual's achievements draw too much attention to themselves instead of to the party and the collective. And so he's constantly fearing this inevitable arrest that he expects to arrive at any moment. So essentially the book is drawing you into the terror on the war front, but also the terror, the fear, the grief back at home. And then the other thing that I've noticed within this work that really coats its entirety and is repeatedly brought up is echoes of the past atrocities within Russian history, and really recent Russian history at this point, whether it's Golodomor, the Civil War, or the Great Purge of 1937. That is a year, and the arrests, the sudden disappearances, the executions, the heavy censorship, all that happened in that specific year is repeatedly brought up in this book. And you feel those echoes and how it impacted basically every character in this book has been impacted in some shape or form to varying extents, whether they were in the Red Army and this one guy got punched and lost a few teeth during interrogations, or one person was sent to the Gulag in Kolyma, another person was executed, like all sorts of things. And so again, there's this, I don't know, this push and pull basically going on between all these citizens, where they have this instinctual pride and loyalty, specifically the old Bolsheviks that have this loyalty to the original ideals, which at this time are still pretty fresh. They're still, 20 years basically later, I think 25 years later is the anniversary when this battle is taking place, when this book is centered around. It's 25 years since the October Revolution. And so these characters are just pulled in both directions. They have this nationalistic pride, they have this loyalty, this fealty, this still idealism that socialism is working, it will bring about, this utopia that was promised by Lenin and all of that. At the same time, though, they're witnessing the horrors that are delivered to them by Stalin and his regime and all of that. And, but at the same time, they're also fighting fascism and a horrific, murderous dictatorship on the Western Front. And their victory is almost soured by the fact that they have defended their country, but they've also defended it in the honor and under the current control of Joseph Stalin. So there's just so many components to this book. I can't really do it all right now. I have a ton of notes, and I plan to make a bigger project on this overall. And that's actually the last thing I'll say is, I don't think it's necessary, I can't really speak to it yet, but I don't feel like you have to read Stalingrad before you get to Life and Fate. However, I have heard that a lot of these characters appear in that novel, and so this is really a continuation of that. So with that in mind, I definitely will be reading, in Russian it's Zapravaya Dela, and for some reason, which is For a Just Cause, but for some reason in English it's translated under New York Review of Books to Stalingrad, maybe because that's just a better title for sales, not entirely sure. But I do plan on reading that in about a month or month and a half. As soon as I get settled in Virginia, I'll try and get a copy and read that. So I'll definitely keep you updated once I get that copy and read it, and then I can discuss both of the novels together. But that is it for this video. Like I said, I'm going to be making a part 2 vlog with our final drive to Virginia, finally get settled. And also I'll be having a book haul here coming up soon of all the books that I bought over the past few days. So like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe for more content, comment down below thoughts on anything I've discussed in this video, and I will see you all on the next one.